Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I really don't like doing gear reviews. Truthfully, I find them fucking boring. It's never been videos that I particularly found that fun, but people seem to like them. People seem to want to know. And I'll be honest with you, whenever I'm looking at new items to purchase or whatever it is that I'm getting, I don't buy that much new stuff, but when I do, I like to look on YouTube, kind of see what people are saying about it. I go read the forums and whatever and try to figure some things out. So I wanted to do a couple today. So I'm actually going to do two separate gear reviews today. The first one I want to do is actually on the Leatherman Arc. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, the Arc came out, I think it was November last year, September, sometime last fall. The Arc, the Leatherman Arc came out. It's really kind of taken a lot of their market by storm because it had to offer what a lot of people were looking for in Leathermans. I've always been a big fan of Leathermans. I've always carried a multi-tool. I've gone back and forth on pocket knives a lot, but I generally come back to a Leatherman at some point in time. To me, there's really one multi-tool, and it's Leatherman. I don't like Gerbers because I like knives, I like Leathermans, I like multi-tools that allow for one-handed opening of the knife blade. That's really one of the biggest characteristics that I look at with them, that you have a pocket clip so that I can index it the same every time. Stuff like that that makes it conducive to an everyday carry or a combat knife, right? Because at the end of the day, it may still end up being a defensive knife. So because of that, I stick to Leatherman. Also, I stick to Leatherman because of the quality. If you're a Gerber guy, that's great. I don't hate on you, but that's why I stick to Leatherman. So that being said, the Leatherman Arc came out. It's no surprise how well this thing did. So let's jump in here. Let's look at the Arc and let's see exactly what Leatherman did a little bit differently with this one and what you can expect when you get yours. All right, so here's our Leatherman Arc, and this has been by far my favorite Leatherman. And we'll just go over real quickly the tools. The one thing to note about this Leatherman is it is a little bit more expensive, and we'll talk about why here in a minute, but it runs about $220. You can see I got ours engraved with our company emblem on it, and it was still $220 for that. Now, a couple neat things that Leatherman did do is they did include the pocket clip, which to me is kind of a deal breaker. That's one reason I don't like the Surge, is because you have to buy the aftermarket pocket clip that doesn't work very well. It's kind of loose and wonky in there. And this one, Leatherman included it on there, and then they also gave you the ability to swap it. So if you're left-handed, you can put it on this side. I don't know if that means that you can actually swap the blade, because this is one of the issues with Leatherman, is that the knife blade is not swappable to the left hand. So I'm not sure if they made that. It looks like it probably would swap to the left-hand side, because the left hand, if you were left-handed, you'd be drawing it out this way, so it'd be this side here. It does look like those two are identical sizes, those two slots, and so it actually looks like it probably would swap back and forth if you were left-handed and wanted to do that. Okay, so back to fully open. We have typical wire cutters, needle nose pliers, and then your wire crimper back here on the back side. Now, the one thing that Leatherman did kind of, I guess, screw up on, people have complained about, is right down here in this little fulcrum joint, there's a little bit too much gap, and so they said small wires and stuff tend to get down in there, and it doesn't cut them. To me, it's kind of a moot point because I'm not using this to rewire a house. I'm using this to fix small things when I'm out, and so I might be cutting a couple wires with it. I'm not cutting wires all day with these. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to get my real wire cutters and actually do this properly. So they do have replaceable wire cutters, which has been kind of a new thing that Leatherman's doing over the last few years, but because I think the newer Waves have it. I know the Surge has it. I don't think the Signal does. Anyways, a number of models have them, but the replaceable wire cutters I'm a huge fan of, because I have bent a number of these wire cutters up, just simply cutting things that were probably too big for it. But it's easy enough just to order a new set of wire cutters and pop them in there. It's one little torque screw, not a big deal. Okay, now, closing the Leatherman, the one thing that they did with this Leatherman that was unique is actually it closes using magnets, and I don't know of any other Leatherman model that has that. If you do, post it down in the description box, or maybe other models that have it, but to my knowledge, this is the first one that had it. But the idea was that it would make it to where you could open it with one hand and make it really easy, and it works very well. I've been real happy with it. You kind of open it up like a butterfly knife, and pops right open. So been a very, very nice feature. Now, every tool, with the exception of the pliers, is accessible from the outside of the Leatherman. Now, one of the reasons that this Leatherman was more expensive is because they did include a Magna Cut blade. Magna Cut being a much higher end steel than what they traditionally used, it did add to the price. What I really like about this is that they put your thumb stud there so that you could actually get this open with one hand quickly, and it actually ends up now working as a defensive knife as well as just a utility tool. Great for gun guys and kind of the warrior, the Christian warrior idea, right? So having a knife that is utilitarian as well as defensive, in my eyes, is kind of a no-brainer. Now they do include your typical can opener here. We end up using this a lot because we're camping a lot, but and it's certainly nice to have in emergencies. But it is, I guess, probably not necessary for most people. But like I said, we use ours to death. Now, one of the reasons that the Arc is so much more expensive is because in the bit holder here, they actually give you all the extra bits with it, and where in the other models they don't. The other models you got to pay like $60 if you want to buy those separately, and this one you have a whole big sleeve of a bunch of different bits for it. Now, one thing I wish that Leatherman would do is I wish that they would quit doing the Phillips on one side and the flathead on the other, because you have a flathead over here on this side. This to me is redundant, right? This to me just seems stupid. I would rather have like a Torx bit or something like that over here. Pick the next most common one to use instead of having two flathead drives. But I digress. That's not really here nor there. It is still a very functional tool. Now, coming around, we have our saw. Now again, so the saw, this is one of those tools that I am not a big fan of because I would much rather have another serrated blade here because serrated blades are real nice for things like if you're cutting open a deer or whatever it is. So if Leatherman sees this, make a serrated blade to go in here. I'll buy it and pop it in here, and I'll even do a review for it. So, the saw to me is just not an extremely useful tool. Will people use it? Sure. If you're messing around and building small little traps and stuff like that, maybe. But I've never found much use for it beyond that. So if you have, that's great. Actually, if you have, post it down in the description box below what you use your little Leatherman saw for. Now, moving around, they do have the file over here. Now, a lot of people complain about the file. I like the files. I end up using the files. I like having them because it's great for like sharpening an axe and stuff like that while you're out in the field. So I end up using my files quite a bit. So I'm a big fan. I do like the ones that have the removable files on there, like the Surge does, and so that way if you kind of wear these out, you can replace them with ones that have a little bit more aggressive texture on them. So again, this should have been ideally one that they could do that with. However, Leatherman does have a 25-year warranty, so if you wear this out, just send it in to them and they'll put a new one on there for you. I believe there's no charge on that too, so Leatherman's is pretty renowned for their warranty. Lastly, we come over here, we do have our scissors, standard Leatherman scissors. I used to think these were gimmicky. I was never a big fan of the Leatherman scissors until after having kids. I find that I use them all the freaking time now. So Leatherman scissors are on there. I'm a big fan of them keeping that on there. I like the Leatherman scissors. People don't, that's fine, you don't have to, but I end up using mine quite a bit. There are just some things that cut better with scissors than they do with a pocket knife. Okay, now coming to the back side, one thing that Leatherman did differently is actually how you get these tools out. You actually just press down here and it pops them all up. So it's really kind of a neat thing. So pop them up, cycle through whichever one you need instead of trying to get your finger down in there and everything. So I've really liked the way that they designed that. Again, so we have our screwdriver here. Leatherman technically calls this a pry bar, so they actually give you a little pry bar, and obviously it's a bottle opener as well. But that's your pry bar screwdriver, which effectively does the same thing as a screwdriver on the other side. It's just this one you can use as a pry bar. So I'm a fan of keeping this one. I just think that the one that they put over here on the back side of the Phillips bit should end up being something like a Torx bit that is maybe a little bit. They have Torx bits that go in here. I don't think they make one that has a Phillips and a Torx on the other side, which is what I would want. So anyways, it's kind of a minor complaint. It just seems like maybe a little bit more thought in the design, but a minor complaint, because then if they put a Torx bit there, then somebody's going to say, well, what size Torx bit? And it's like, okay, yeah, gotcha. So it makes it difficult for them to accommodate everybody. Now moving on, we do have our eyeglass screwdriver. Now I was here, let me pull it out so y'all can actually see it since it's against the black background. On one side of the eyeglass screwdriver, you have a flat head. On the other side, you have a Phillips head. It does have a kind of an octagon shape to it, so it has to be keyed in here in a certain direction. It can't just fit in there anyway. It has to be, and that's obvious to keep it from rotating when you're actually using it. I don't use it for eyeglasses because I don't wear eyeglasses. It is nice for fixing things like sunglasses and stuff. The interesting thing about this is I always thought these things were stupid until I realized that I don't actually carry this tool in any of my mobile toolkits. This would be the only one that I have on me. So I actually think it's a good idea, and I think it's very well thought out. The one thing that I end up using this for is I like them as a punch. I end up using them as a punch to take weapons apart and stuff like that. So it's a great option to have on you to be able to take apart an AR-15 or a Glock or something like that. So having a punch is super important. It's not a great punch because it is kind of sharp on this side, and then I don't want to round over my my Phillips head on that side. So but it does serve the purpose and would certainly allow you to do that. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, so the last thing that we have on here is the awl. And again, this is one of those tools that I think is more nostalgic than actually useful. I don't know how many people are out there doing leather work with a little awl. What I end up doing with mine actually is I take them to a bench grinder and I end up cutting another blade on them. And so especially on one like this that doesn't have a secondary blade, is I'll end up cutting another blade here, and this will end up being used to cut open a deer or something like that. What would be really nice is if they gave you options, if Leatherman would actually allow you to purchase these with different options on there, then that would be a game changer, because if I could purchase this with like a gut hook on there for hunting, I would do that all day long. That would be a phenomenal tool to have as a nice little gut hook on here, as opposed to an awl, which I'm not doing any leather. I don't do leather work anyways, but I'm certainly not doing it out in the woods. So things like that, it's not so much that it needs more thought, because this might be very good for some specific person, but giving me options on setup, right? Have standard features on here that I can pick through and say, okay, I want this to be a gut hook instead of the awl, or the another smaller screwdriver, or whatever it is. Give me some options on here. You have enough tools. There's no sense in not providing all those options. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure and like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We will catch you all in the next one.